Shut the front door and let grandma out of the closet. I'm talking with Peter and Debbie tonight on Meet Our Mentors. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Peter and Debbie. I got to tell you, I wish we could have started the broadcast about 15 minutes ago because we've seen 16 costume changes and 5 set changes so far. Hello, Peter. Hello, Debbie. Welcome to Meet Our Mentors.
Hi.
Hello there.
I can't believe you're lying right at the beginning of the show like that. It's only going to get worse.
It just sets the tone, really, is what we're trying to do. Yeah. I tell you, the little slideshow that was going through, the one where Debbie is leaning over the booth and whispering into Peter's ear is a classic Peter and Debbie. Is that from Puppet Fest Midwest? Is that where it's like, and that's where I'm sure what Debbie is doing is saying, listen, Peter, this is what you need to do to make sure that things are going well. But what I would love to believe it is, listen, Peter, can you believe that so-and-so did that so-and-so thing again that we hate that so-and-so doing?
No, we never said that at the festival. We did it when we got home.
Yeah, after we got home, then we would do that.
And it was the so-and-so and so-and-so?
No, I think it was one of those things where I need to go home and get 3 sewing machines because one of the teachers forgot to tell me that they needed sewing machines. So which of our 10 sewing machines actually are in working order so I could bring them back at 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody else has gone to bed. I think that was probably it.
Yes,
I'm sure none of the instructors ever came unprepared. I think that's impossible.
I think they just forgot.
Yeah,
possibly. Well, I can't. I've really been looking forward to this because I think I was exposed to Peter at the 1991 National Festival in San Francisco, 91 or 93, somewhere in that area.
Mike Osnowitz?
Yeah, with Mike, it was Mike Osnowitz's festival. It was, and I think it was 93, and it was my first exposure ever to a potpourri event, and I'm pretty sure that Peter was the host of the potpourri in 93. Am I
Oh yes, that's right, I was. And Pix was stage manager. That's always a great combination because Pix is, all I have to do is stand in front of the mic, and Pix has got it, the rest of it all organized, except we argue about running order, but everything else he does. And it's really easy and really not worrisome at all because, Pix will cover for anything. He would come up beside you, he'd stand like this, and he'd say, while he was doing something else, he'd say under his breath, now don't move because I'm going to shove this table in your leg. And so you just stand there, and then he'd shove the table in the leg. And one time he did it. You tell the story.
One of the Minneapolis festivals where we were all sitting, everyone, the audience, at least some of us, were on the floor watching Pix and Peter do their potpourri stuff. And there was a woman that I didn't know sitting behind me, and she kept asking just the world in general, why do these two work together if they hate each other so much? And I just kind of smiled and nodded. And then she was just getting really worried. And so I had to tell her, well, I'm married to one of them, and they really are very dear friends. She was just so concerned.
I think I'd been doing puppetry for about 3 months by that point, and I remember seeing you and Pix on stage, and I remember thinking, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Like that's like that level, because there was just a level of comfort on stage between the two of you that was brilliant and put the audience at ease, with the exception, I'm sure, of that poor little old lady.
Well, that was it. That was in Minneapolis. That was
many years later. But
then we had Celeste Bennett come out. Remember, she presented bowling trophies to everybody. She came out in a gold spandex, sparkly bathing suit with a shower curtain shoved in her butt, so it was like a big giant train coming out.
And cowboy boots.
She was great. Yeah.
And shove that bowling trophy prize. They would all sort of recoil in horror.
and that's probably the point where I said, and that's who I don't want to be when I grow up.
Celeste.
Yeah.
No, she had no fear. It was perfect.
She was great.
Nice. So that was 93. You guys have been doing this for a little while. So like when did you start individually, and then when did you come together as a couple and a performer couple as well?
He's getting us focused. That's good.
Let me just tick off the list we've got here, Art, so that we know we've got that covered. Okay, good. Go ahead.
What?
When did you start?
When did I start?
Yeah.
Oh, look, there they've got both of us early photos. That's good. Well, I didn't wasn't interested in puppets until university. I was going to be an art teacher. I was going to be a children's art teacher. And I took a class in my senior year at University of Hawaii to learn how to make puppets to teach the children. And unfortunately, I got cast in a puppet show at the university, and I got hooked and went back and got my master's in theater and puppetry. And it was all history from there. I just fell in love with it, partly because, should I keep talking? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Because we've got all these photographs here.
Partly because when I was getting my degree, they were bringing in guest artists in to teach during the summers at the University of Hawaii, the theater program. And so the first person that I learned puppetry from was Kermit Love. And
wow.
Kermit in there, because we had been taught, how to do it carefully. And then Kermit came in and, we're doing a show. Come on, let's go out to dinner and write it. And then, oh, no, not that one. We got to have Kermit in there first. But anyway. So we'd just wing it. It was just amazing. And he did it the first year I was there, and that got me hooked. And then the second summer, he did it again, and that got me even more hooked because it was just all improv. And then there we go. There he is. So one of those, the one on, how do I say left and right on the screen?
Where he's
the one in the seat or not in the seat.
His arms up is the second year. And the first year he's holding a Simon bowl because we all went out to dinner at a Simon place. And we came up with the script. It's called Chopsticks. In 1976, we came up with it. So we had a noodle man who came out and destroyed the stage. And that first photo, sorry, Connie, that I said don't use that one before, was of me working like shrimp and fish cake. And the whole show was a Simon bowl exploding. And
there was also a giant Simon bowl on stage, and you can look those up in your old P of A printed journals, as all of you should have a large collection of them.
Yeah, it was printed in the journal. But then the contrast to that, after doing 2 years with Kermit, then the next year we had Nikki Tilrow.
Oh, wow. What a contrast.
And we had tons of chefs, and that's a very young me. Wow. Working a shrimp and interacting with the kids afterwards. Because then after that, after all those summers of madness, then we had Nikki Tilrow, who you spent 6 weeks in a mime class. Whoops, got to get me on camera there, doing exactly I think she was 2 fingers. I'm very sorry, dear. We've been arguing about this for 40 years, 1 finger. And getting everything precise to the count, to the breath. Then she allowed us, there's Nikki. Then she allowed us to actually touch the puppets and do a show. But the contrast between Kermit and Nikki was what just made me realize I want to do this when I grow up. One or the other, or combine them somehow. So
so what was it about the like the improviness, the detailedness, like what was it for you? Was it building, or was it the performing, or what was it that really was the most attractive part that was like this is the changing the trajectory of my life?
The building, I don't remember either. I think other classes we did building. And unfortunately, the best memories of building is this was back before people knew how toxic contact cement was. And we would sit in the basement of the theater making puppets and convinced that we were just God's gift to the universe. And then the next day would look at them and go, let's try this again. But yes, the building was exciting. And the performing was exciting. I was always interested in theater and performing, but was always too shy. So behind a puppet, there you go. It was perfect.
And so you graduate from University of Hawaii, and then you're off and running. So what did you start to do?
My company was called, my business was called Puppets Plus, because I did performances plus teaching workshops, plus all of my art, supported myself the first couple years, all my art teaching background that I had nurtured before I got into puppets. So I did a lot of art workshops in the elementary schools, and since they knew me, they gave me a shot at doing puppet shows as well, and that's what helped build my repertoire.
And Peter, when did you horn in on her business then? Is that the
Oh, he was doing puppets for many years.
1986 is when I horned in on the business, and for a number of years after, when we got married, for a number of years, she would advertise me as Canadian puppeteer.
Visiting puppeteer, Peter Allen.
What a hook. I love that.
Didn't have too much faith in our staying together for too long. She just thought I was visiting.
It was a marketing technique. Suddenly I had to double the business because we were both solo performers, and I had to book both of us.
But you did double the business.
I did.
You were always
because
already
you were
too
visiting
busy.
puppeteer.
But you were already too busy when I got there. So
just
I took up some of the slack.
So then, Peter, where did you start with your puppetry career? Was it 76 as well, or way before that?
Well, many years ago, Art.
Back in 1932.
Back in 1960 something. I was a little wolf cub, which is before Boy Scouts.
He grew up in England.
And I grew up in England, and one of the badges was the entertainer's badge, and so I did that. I had some horrible store-bought plastic-headed puppets that I used and got the badge, and then from doing that, then my dad built the stage, and I guess my mom sewed all the curtains. The curtains were made out of, in England, you don't have central, or back then, you didn't have central heating. You had a fire in the living room, and if you went to the dining room, you put a fire in the dining room. We had an oil burner thing in the bathroom to heat that up. And so the velvet that was used for the puppet stage was the old velvet curtain they used to wrap around the big cistern that held the water to flush the toilet in winter. They took that off and put that on the stage.
So you couldn't do puppet shows in the winter?
No, in the winter.
No. Sorry, Peter, you can't do puppet shows. We need to wrap the cistern.
Yeah. So then from doing that, then I did shows for old age people and a couple of businesses, birthday parties and stuff like that. And then left England and moved to Canada.
When you were 14?
When I was 12 going
12.
on 13. Yeah. And joined the Vancouver Guild of Puppetry. There should be a picture of that. And it was a really, really wonderful thing, the Vancouver Guild of Puppetry. This is pre-Muppets, let's remember that. So my exposure to puppets in England on television was Z-Cars, Fireball XL5, Supercar, The Wooden Tops, Andy Pandy, Pinky and Perky, Sooty and Sweep, Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men. Have you heard of Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men?
I've never heard of Bill and Ben, the Flower
Pot Men.
Men.
You would love Bill and Ben. It's the one thing that will get Philip Huber screaming when you show him marionettes walking around trees with actual limbs sticking out. He gets very excited about marionettes. Anyway, so I joined the Vancouver Guild of Puppetry, which was a very important part of my life, and a very important part of the puppet group in the Pacific Northwest. The Guild would always put on a puppet day. It would always put on a series of shows in the fall for 2 months. So every Sunday afternoon, there would be 2 shows. And usually the Guild would put on one of those shows. So you'd have to go and meet and rehearse with all of these other people to do it. And one of the shows we did was The King's Foot by Philpott. From England, because this one lady had taken classes from him in England, the Educational Puppetry, what do you call those guys? You used to be a member. Educational Puppetry Association, I think it was called EPA.
Okay.
And that was it. And then
were you working professionally at that time, or were you still just sort of?
No, I worked at a hospital.
Did you have a sense that you would be doing puppetry as a living, or was it just feeling like a hobby, or like when did you decide to go all in? Yeah.
When I was told to.
He had
best time to do it.
He had this romantic idea of doing puppet shows for a living where you do whatever you want. And then I broke his heart when, as soon as we got married and he was no longer visiting Canadian puppeteer, I told him, you need a preschool show, you need a Halloween show, you need a Christmas show, you need, and then the fifth, I can't remember what the fourth one was. Every fifth show you build, you can build for yourself. But the others have to follow the pattern, because that was the marketing in Hawaii. We had, it's a small community. We were doing the same clients like 4 times a year.
Yeah,
so we
right.
Yeah. For them.
Yeah. And people would phone up and say, "Oh, we want a show." Okay, what date? And say, "Well, Debbie's not available that day." "Oh, well, when is she available?" So you could tell that they really didn't care for me very much.
And vice versa.
No, that's not true. Yeah, and going to Hawaii, I was supposed to arrive in October with a Halloween show to do. I had shipped by Halloween Variety Marionettes et al. To Hawaii.
And I had already booked it all over the island.
And it wasn't arriving. When we called to check on it, when it was supposed to arrive, it was still on the dock in Seattle. So
no.
I had to build a variety marionette show, and a Halloween variety marionette show, and a small Halloween show that would tour daycares and schools and libraries and stuff.
So that was his introduction to the real world of puppetry, where we were both pulling all-nighters the first month we were married, building puppets.
That's a good, and that wasn't the last time you did something like that. I remember you guys telling me a story where you had to build a show, one of the shows you did with Jim Neighbors for, I think it was one of the symphony shows in Hawaii, where you built like 1 million marionettes in a brief period of time. Am I making that up, or is that?
Yeah, you are. But it sounds good. Yes, that's correct. Jim Neighbors called us personally and said, "Peter, Debbie, there's nobody else."
No,
that's not
that was Philip.
I think that was Philip.
Philip did marionettes for Jim Neighbors.
I see.
We went and watched him.
And then had to go out for ice cream later. Yeah, every time you go with
Philip, you got to give him ice cream.
Got to get ice cream.
Nice. That's good to know. That's good to know. So
he whines from the back of the car. Are we going for ice cream?
Are we there yet?
Yeah.
How would you describe the style that you developed to get, like, when you brought Debbie's style and Peter's style together? How would you describe the style of not only the
solo performers?
Yeah.
So it didn't matter until.
Would you perform each other's shows then, or would you? Oh,
no,
okay.
We had our own shows, our own stages, our own style. We started many years later when we were doing the Honolulu Academy of Art, 7 shows a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks during Christmas. We built that show so that we could take turns. So one of us would be doing the 7 shows a day, and the other one of us would be touring with a library preschool show. So those shows were both
built. Malls, shopping malls.
Those shows were built so we could both do them. And they weren't all that good because of it, because I hate mall shows. But we did it. So
I thought my mall show was great.
So the only time we have actually, yes, your mall show was great. The only time we've actually done a show together was, now we're jumping ahead, one of our heroes, definitely one of our mentors, was Lumen Code Canada Puppets. And I had worshipped him from afar because he had performed at University of Hawaii, and I never believed that he would now be a member of the family for us, which is great. But he wanted us. Oh, there's the oldest photo. That's a great one of Code Canada Puppets.
So that's Lumen and Arlen, his wife, wife.
His wife built them.
Yeah,
and designed, built.
Do you know what show that is?
No, I believe it's something called the Magic Pike. I believe, but that's pre me. And I believe it is also probably one of the black theater ones they did in the
Black
Curtain of Light.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pre-me. Peter met Lumen when he was 14. So Lumen was instrumental in, no?
No.
12?
No.
Was he part? He wasn't part of the Vancouver Guild when you were.
Yeah, he would come in and he would do stuff and he would all
There
this kind of
he
stuff. But I
is.
never really met him. Again, I just stepped back and worshipped him from afar. I had to meet him when I did this. I was the festival director for the second Pacific Northwest Regional Festival in 1982, I believe. And I was told by my committee that I needed to go to North Vancouver and ask the codes to perform at this podunk little regional festival.
For $50
for
budget?
$50. Was the budget. So this region, the Pacific Northwest region, each guild, there were 4 guilds, would automatically have one performance slot. And then the host guild, which was Vancouver, would fill some of the other spots. So anyway, I went to North Vancouver. They were exceedingly sweet and very nice to me and very gentle and said, yes, they would do it. And I said, well, it's a double bill because I had booked in the 2.5 days that the festival was going to take place, Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday till lunch. I booked 14 shows.
He was young.
I was
Wow.
stupid.
Trying to give them their money's worth is what you were trying to do.
So anyway, so I said it's a double show with your show, then we'll turn the chairs around and we'll watch the other show. And Lumen said, and Arlen said, we don't do double bills. And I said, oh, okay. But we might do a double bill if you let us pick who is the other person. So I said, oh, okay. Well, Letty Schubert. So then I had to call Letty Schubert, who had to come all the way from Mill Valley,
another puppet god for
us, for $50 to come up and do a show with
were you guys doing this in Asilomar? Is that where it was, or was it up?
No, it was at the University of British Columbia in Pacific Northwest.
Gotcha.
The first puppet festival at UBC. Yeah. So that was my first exposure to the codes. I would hear about the shows they did from my sister because she was in the elementary school, and she never gave me a very good description of what they were doing, which really picked me off no end. But that was all right. Oh, that's Letty down there.
Now I've seen Lumen shows, but I never had a chance to see Letty shows. What were her shows like?
They were smaller versions of Lumen's mime shows.
Not copying him. They just had the same style.
Yeah, very simple, expressive puppets. And the show she did was Movements for Small Mimes. Oh, was that it? Anyway, expert manipulation. She's got a book, the codes printed it, of her manipulation. And she was really, really sweet. And she came to the first regional festival at the Pacific Northwest, which was in Portland, Oregon, and saw me perform the Amazing Misto's Magic Show. And so then I guess she liked me because then she would book me to go to the Southwest region to do stuff as well.
Yeah. So yes, that's what's interesting is that both of us were very attracted before we'd met each other to even though our shows tend to be a little wilder, to the mime idea of minimal dialogue where you can see what puppets are thinking. The puppets are telling the story through their actions and their interactions and the props they're using, but the dialogue was not very important at all, and or minimal. And so that's why we've always, now we're going to get hate mail, we've always had a problem with moving mouth puppet dominant shows because all they're doing is talk. And there's so much more you can do with your hands than that.
Getting back to meeting Lumen. So they were having a
Peter, you have to raise your hand, but if you, unless that's a Debbie rule, then feel free.
There you go.
Getting back to Lumen, they were having a regional festival in North Vancouver, Canada, and it was originally called the Peter, Paul, and Pix
We're
festival.
talking now about 1989, 1991. I don't remember. Anyway, after we were married.
Yeah. And so to start with, to start with, we were just booked to do a show. They didn't particularly care. And then Lumen got involved and became artistic director and informed us that the only reason we could come is if we built a new show and that we both performed in the show together. So that's when we built Momotaro, the Peach Boy, which looked like a Japanese block print set. Every single one of the puppets were triple cast. There was a large, there was a medium, and a small, and
hand puppets and again mostly mime. All mime.
Yeah.
We narrated as we were changing scenery. We were doing the traditional. See, this is where my master's degree in theater comes in. Yeah, right. the traditional. I can't remember the name of it. Was it the Hanamichi?
No, that's what you walk out.
Yeah. One of us would be frantically changing scenery behind the proscenium. The other one would come out, draw the curtain across the stage, stand and narrate the next scene to fill while the scenery is being changed, and then run back and would both be manipulating. So what we think is funny is that performance was okay.
Oh,
it was the first time we'd ever done it, and we were doing it for a festival, which is something Lumen has always said never do that.
Yes, what a miserable guy.
And he just smirked. He knew he was killing us.
Never take a new show to a festival, is what he said.
But since we were living in Hawaii, Boys' Day, May 5th, is a big Japanese celebration. And Momotaro the Peach Boy is the classic story that they do on Boys' Day. So we had, again, I'm the marketing person, we had a moneymaker. We would rent a theater space, and every May 5th, we would do a weekend of shows doing Momotaro the Peach Boy, working together backstage.
3 shows a day because we were making money and we were selling juice.
Juice, yes, and cookies. There we go. But then one year we almost killed each other because in the front, I mean, on stage, you're seeing them. The puppets are sweetly talking to each other, and it's oh so sweet.
What's happening is the peach is starting at the 3-tiered waterfall. The tiny peach at the top is dropping down while the other 2 characters are talking. Then the medium peach is dropping down the second, and then the giant peach is coming up to float on the front.
Well, I'm talking about the scene where you're working the father, I'm working the mother, the baby's emerging from the peach, and it's oh so tender, and the audience is just cooing, and it really must have been effective. But backstage, I'm saying, you missed your cue, and he's hitting me back, and we're no, go over here, do it. And after that, we decided we can either share a puppet stage or we can stay married.
I think the problem was too many shows back to back, so that you were each person was like 1 second ahead of when the other person was getting ready to move, and it was wasn't good.
No,
puppets were pretty good. Deb carved all those puppets out of styrofoam, all 3 for each single character.
It's got to be difficult coming from as a solo performer to then, come together and work, because it's, as a solo performer, you get to set your own rhythm, and, you, like me, I think, set your own rhythm based on, where is your audience with you? Are they not with you? Or you're, right. So I would imagine like trying to coordinate in your head with the audience that many performances and trying to do it together, that would be really difficult to do if that's not something you were doing all the time.
Yeah. And I think the other problem with the show, although it seemed to work, Lumen didn't say anything horrible about it. And he has said things to me occasionally before if he didn't like something, was that each of the segments themselves was set to a block of music. So that you knew when you had to move and when everything had to be done. So although you had a little bit of playtime, you didn't have a lot.
I'd forgotten that. We did that for the Christmas shows after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So when we got hired to do the Academy of Arts with those 7 shows a day, 5 days a week, we would do all the voices live, no matter what show it was. But the soundtrack would run in the background because we only had 17 minutes to get the show done.
And so that would act as sort of a metronome for you for the show to know, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Paul Vincent Davis used to do that. He would turn on the music, and then everything else, and the script and everything else was all timed out to that.
So the voices are live. So again, you have some time to interact with the audience and slow down or speed up. But that you're right. The music's running, because at the Academy of Arts, we had a new audience come in every half hour. So 18-minute show, I had the soundtrack timed out, and then bye, out you go. Next group's waiting. Bring them in, introduce, turn on the music, and go. It was the foolish young people, but it paid really well.
and really, I mean, we did things like that at the local theme park here at Fairy Tale Town. We were doing 4 shows a day, 5 days a week, back to back, all live, killing our voices. But it after doing that for 5 years, I became a better puppeteer. Just not doing a lot of new stuff, but doing live shows over and over again. And they would grow and they would evolve, and my skills would be better just because I was up there getting bored with what I was doing and trying new things.
Exactly.
Yeah, we would have docents come in, and they'd say to me, when Debbie does that part, it's so much better than yours. Because she does this and this and this. And it was like, oh yeah, I could do that and that and that. That's good. That'll save me working out a whole bunch of stuff.
We would go home at night and be talking about the show. And well, I added this and this bit in the show. So then the next day when it was his turn, he'd try that bit. No, it didn't work. So I did this instead. So you're right. It's doing it that many times
is a really good thing. It really
it's live.
Yeah.
If you're not just jiggling to recorded voices.
Gosh, I thought I was going to be the first one to say something.
Well, that's all the time. No. Well, so Hawaii, I mean, it's an amazing place. I love to go to Hawaii, but I can't not imagine making a living in Hawaii just because, like you were saying, it is such a small community. And so would you island hop, or would you stay mainly on Oahu, or like, how did you manage? And then when did you eventually depart Hawaii?
The island hopping, back then, the state library system was really the state library system. And if they liked what you were doing with your shows, they would not only book you for however many libraries, this is the early days, however many libraries there were on Oahu, but we would have to build our shows to fit in the proper size trunk to put you on one of those tiny little puddle jumper airplanes and, little prop jobs. And they'd fly you to Molokai and you do whatever was there, and then they'd fly you to Maui and you do whatever was there. So again, talk about live performing in different locations, doing the same thing over and over. So yeah, then they started to diversify and not do that after I don't know how many years. It wasn't that they got tired of us, they just stopped doing that. This performer's doing the whole state. But that was a good time, and it was pretty exciting to get in that rental car and go down that dirt road because you were told there was a library at the end of
Hey, like, I don't think so.
Doing the Hana Road. Have you ever been to Maui?
Oh, I've done the Hana Road. Yes.
The library at the end of the Hana Road. And the first year they made me drive it. The next time they flew me in because
nice.
They took pity on me.
I think we had a convertible when we did it, and I can't tell you the number of bugs that I ate along the way. It was, no need for lunch.
We're all going to be eating bugs soon. It'll be great.
So yes, we make a fine living. We also, here we go. Birthday parties are a really big deal in Hawaii because both the Japanese cultures and the Hawaiian culture, the first year birthday party is Party City. And the host would rent a hotel ballroom and invite 300 people, and they'd all be sitting and eating and talking, and then they'd have a puppet show for the kiddies, and that was us. So we knew where every loading bay on every expensive hotel in Waikiki. They all smell terrible, no matter how expensive they are.
And they would introduce the puppet show like this.
Well, the buffet's going to close in 5 minutes, so get back there. But by the way, here's the puppet show. Everybody stands up.
Never compete against a buffet that's closing.
Yeah.
Come on.
You betcha.
Puppetry 101.
But again, we would both be, so weekends, or we would each, remember, solo performers. I'd do one, he'd do another. So, what?
I remember one year we did like, I'll make up the number because I don't really remember what the number was, but it was a big number, like 142 performances in December or something. And I called Renee. Do you know
Yes,
Renee?
yes.
So we love
Watch
Renee.
your language.
Yeah, I'll be careful with my language. So I called Renee and I said, just to check in because he would call us, and said, well, we've got 150 shows this month. I couldn't believe it. Click.
Hung up on him.
So he hung up on me. So I called back. Said, I need to hear how many shows you're doing. I'll call Jim Gamble, is what he said. So I said, oh, okay. And then it was okay from then on. It was good. Yeah.
Nice.
Renee was a really wild but sweet, wonderful man.
Yeah, so when you talk about mentors, we never really had anybody that adopted us and taught us their method. But I think part of it was we both were starry-eyed. And if we would go to a puppet festival and would see anyone in the older generation performing, we would follow them around like a puppy until we learned everything we could about them. Now I'm feeling really old. Like Letty was such a puppet history fanatic. And you can tell Peter is too. And he got it from Letty and Lumen. And we both got it from an awful lot of people, because the history of puppetry, where it all started, how everybody started doing stuff is really important. And but Renee was one of them. We would just sort of follow people around and worship them and sit with them. And I used to be just amazed at people that would be saying, well, I'm getting old. I'd much rather be working in the garden and working on my tomatoes. Was that, you said that was Carl?
Yeah.
Carl Arms. And now I'm going, yeah, I can see your point.
And it's interesting that you see styles that are interesting and you're not copying them, but you're like, that's the kind of puppetry that I like. And so that influences your work. And I think of people like Matt Sandbank, who came to Puppet Fest Midwest and took Nappy's workshop in Shadows and got inspired. And his work is nothing like Nappy's, but you can see the influence of Nappy, and it's brilliantly Matt's and wonderfully influenced. And that brings me to Puppet Fest Midwest, which I can't go without talking about. Can you tell me a little bit about this weird little festival that you guys did for 10 years in the middle of nowhere? Tell me how that came about, and tell me your experience with that.
We're going to give you the nice, clean, gentle version, because I think we already talked about this pre-show. A number of us were deeply involved with the Puppeteers of America. And when the Puppeteers of America decided to go to every other year festivals, a number of us paid our own way to get to meetings to voice our objections to it. You can poke me anytime. That was basically our core group. And it started after, our planning of it started after the Carter's Festival in Seattle.
1999.
1999. Right. Yeah. We did stuff for that festival, and then got pulled in to do a show because some Brazilian troupe or something was giving them hard time about something or other. So they called him and booked us. We weren't supposed to be a main stage production. We were supposed to organize the Punch and Judy Day and do pre-registration Misto show. Anyway, so that core group decided that they would do it. And we were the idiots that found a place to do it. It had dorm rooms, had a place where you could eat. It had that wonderful little library theater across the street,
which was so sweet. Yes.
It had a dark space, or used to have a dark space. Maybe, yeah, I think you were there for it when it had it.
So we had two theaters.
So we had 2 theaters.
Dorms.
Our only problem was it was a dry campus. So what we had to do was find a place
off campus.
Off campus. So across the street, literally across the street, was Pam's Wild Onion Restaurant. And, oh, there's Drew. Yeah.
Puppet Jeopardy.
Yeah,
there was tons of classrooms too, and classroom spaces like this, so you could have different workshops. Now, the format of Puppet Fest Midwest was vastly different than any festival I'd ever been to overseas or in the United States. How did you come up with the format?
Yeah, it was very different from the format that the P of A was using at the time too. We started on a Tuesday, which would allow everybody that was actually making money as a puppeteer to have the weekend to do shows, and then Monday they could travel or whatever. And then, so they would just miss one weekend, and there's Lumen with one of the puppets again.
But yeah,
that was in the big museum space where you had the display of all the puppets, which was beautiful every year. Yeah.
Gallery that Philip did the exhibit Philip Huber did the exhibit every year. Yeah. But you're right, the format was like 5 hours a day.
Well, it didn't start out that way. It started out with less of a workshop, but it evolved into everybody wanting to do almost a whole day. They would take the workshop.
So it was, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So 5 days, 5 hours a day. You would sign up for one workshop. So you would have all those hours to do. With Nappy, you would not only make the puppets, but you would build the stage, you would perform it, you would rehearse it. And then what was our lovely recital, show and tell? What we called it? I don't remember.
Something like that.
Everybody performed for everybody else. But
the reason they performed for everybody else, Art, was so that somebody in the audience that had taken a crappy show, a crappy workshop,
there were no crappy.
Bun Raku puppetry on the tabletop. If they'd taken
because
that
it's free.
Yeah. If they'd taken that, whatever workshop they'd taken, and they didn't think it was quite right, they might see something else that would interest them for next time.
Year. So that's right, 25 hours of total immersion into your into whatever you were interested in.
And this was not what the P of A did. The P of A
did. Not at all. It was like 90-minute workshops, maybe, and sometimes 3 hour. But it was incredible when I finally got invited to come to P of A after many
P of A, yeah.
I mean Puppet Fest Midwest. When I finally got invited to come to Puppet Fest Midwest, yeah, no, exactly.
I think what you meant to say was when I finally accepted the invitation to come to Puppet Fest Midwest.
Yeah, that was. There's the manual. Yes. Yeah, it was so interesting because you had Paul Mesner teaching rod puppetry. You had Nappy teaching shadow puppetry. You had Philip Huber teaching marionettes. You had who else was on the Drew Allison did work.
Writing. Drew Allison would do foam.
There he is.
Nick would do foam.
While you've got that photo up of Drew, again, where you learn from watching other people and say, I could incorporate that. Drew is the master of being on stage with a puppet and completely disappearing. I'm sorry, that's another one of our many biases of people that are visible on stage as they are manipulating their puppet, and all you see is their face and their mouth, and the puppet is secondary. Drew can be right out there and you don't see him because he is master of focus, and manipulation is just so good. Oh, we had to put this one in. Were you there that
year? I don't remember. Tell me about this picture.
Randall McGee taught a ventriloquism workshop, and you built a puppet and then you practiced. And one of the things you couldn't say as a ventriloquist was the letter P.
So Nancy Fraser Fawcett decided she was going to do I can't remember, Porky Pig was on, whatever. And so the puppet would be talking, and every time it needed to say P, it would look at her and she'd go, and it would, it was just hysterical. So we had to put that in.
And she was also somebody that came back a lot. One time she was playing her bagpipes and people decided to have a little parade up and down the street. And then one time a bunch of real idiots started setting off fireworks.
Oh.
Remember that, Art?
Being a professional pyromaniac, yes, I have pictures of this too somewhere on my hard drive here. Where it's really the the United States premier puppeteers. We had Paul Mesner, we had Pix, we had
Nick and Rose.
Yeah, Nick Barone, we had we had like everyone, and Kurt Hunter was out there, and we were all holding. Oh yeah, Kurt's a well-known pyromaniac. I'm sure this isn't news to anyone. But we were all out there holding Roman candles. I mean, it was like here in California, you can get a sparkler with a permit, right? But when we were Puppet Fest Midwest just happened to land on the 4th of July, one of the years that you did it. And I walked into this huge tent with like high explosives, and my eyes must have been this big, and Kurt's too. And so we all went out and we were lighting off these things, holding them in our hands, just having the best time. And then we walked away from that going, if those things would have blown up in our hands, we would have lost 50% of the puppeteers in the United States just in one event.
Remember, we are the mommy and daddy of that festival, and we were watching you guys. This was the night before the festival was due to start, and we were thinking one good explosion and we've lost the entire festival. All of you guys blowing your fingers.
I know. I was just imagining Philip Huber trying to do his marionette act with his teeth, right? Just trying to hold one of the puppets with his teeth.
Philip was there?
Oh, of course. Philip was, we could have lost a few fingers and a few careers. I
want to go back and mention.
We're running out of time already.
Oh, the logo was designed, first of all, for a regional Pacific Southwest Regional Festival that Debbie ran. It was designed by Nick LaFleur, who we were friends with. He designed also our logo. And then we
as a wedding present. There we go.
Yeah. So we actually paid him to buy that thing off of him. So it wasn't stolen from. Oh, good for you, Nappy. You're a good guy. No wonder.
But he was probably egging us on from the sidelines. Come on.
Anyway, so Nick designed that on our telling him kind of what we wanted, and it did everything. You're right. And the festival was people taught and then demonstrated that they could actually do what they taught. It wasn't somebody that said, I know how to knit the Bible and how do you do it. It was somebody that actually could knit it and actually do it so that it was good and well done.
Yes. So the format was that 5 hours with lots of coffee breaks and lunch breaks. Because
oh my gosh, you would have to eat like a dozen cookies every day because there was like always a cookie break or always a meal break or always a coffee break somewhere.
Chance to cleanse the brain. And so, we'd have the 5 hours of workshops. Then in the afternoon, there'd be something, lecture, discussion, something. And then, Puppet Jeopardy. Oh, that one. Okay, good. And then in the evening, there would be a performance. And then didn't we sometimes do late night? Anybody who wanted to.
Yeah, that's how we got to see Keith Schubert do stuff.
I can't remember what we called it. Open space? Was that us or was that somebody else?
I don't remember.
We just said, here's the room, set up a show. We'll all come see it when you tell us to. And that's when we met Keith Schubert, who showed up, set up, and was doing
Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the silent German film about a murdering somnambulist.
And none of us knew him. He came in from Chicago, totally exhausted.
Pigtails, overalls.
And just was working 2 days to set up this late night performance. And we all crowded in there, all ready for a good time. And he starts.
It was a Friday night.
And it's a small campus. There's no security. There's nothing. We were alone on that campus. And in one part of the show, he comes out in costume with a knife, and he's coming out. Whoop, get me on camera. He's coming out and attacking, coming for the audience. And of course, mommy and daddy in the back row are going, he could kill us all, and nobody will find us until morning in the janitor's shop.
Yeah, and Chris Carter screamed bloody murder when he came out, which scared everybody too.
Perfect.
It was one of the best shows I've ever seen because it terrorized us completely.
It was great. Yeah.
Well, like Nappy just commented, I mean, you would have at the beginning, I think in the last year or two, you had I think an afternoon show and an evening show, maybe the last year, but before that, it was just a single performance, and it allowed you to enjoy the performance and not be overwhelmed by seeing too much, and also to break up your time with your workshop person as well. It was such a nice format. I really hope that at some point we get to see that kind of format again. Before we go, Connie, could you put that picture back up? That's a great picture of this one. This, I think, is the first show I ever saw of Peter's, and I fell in love with this little character. Just certainly the design of the puppet. I like the fringe hair moved so brilliantly. I love the puppet.
Maryland code. Everything I've done has been stolen from the codes.
Well, it was perfect. It was perfect. And then I think the basic plot was he was a failed magician, right? Like nothing would go right.
Possibly say that, Art. Don't you have any imagination?
And if that wasn't the plot, then it was a poorly done show.
It was poorly done. I can agree with it. It was when that show is really, really old. I did it when my son Kyle turned 2, and he's now
43.
So it's an old show. And so when
Misko's been built a few times.
Yeah, that's the rebuild of the show. And so Pix also likes that show. And I don't believe the puppet ever sounded like it did until Pix told me what it was supposed to sound like.
And
anyway, so
Drew.
No.
The amazing.
They both do it. They drive me nuts. He doesn't do that, but now he does.
Nice.
Anyway, the show is so old that you can actually dissect it into finding out why it works so well as a backstage outdoor roving show.
You should write a book.
I should write a book. I teach a workshop.
There we go. So good that you saw that one. That is a good one.
Yeah. So why did it work,
Where did
Peter?
you see that? Where did
I probably saw it in 1999, where at the Seattle Festival, because you performed it there, right?
While everybody was registering. Yeah.
Why did it work? Why did it work?
Oh,
do you got time?
You don't have time to analyze.
Right. Well, give me the 2-minute version.
It's a what?
Give me the 2-minute version.
There is no 2-minute version.
All right.
It works so well because to start with, you have to gather a crowd. And so you play a little bit of music with no puppets up, and then you check to see if anybody's there. Drop it down. Away with the mustard. Yeah, all right. And then finally, when you've got a crowd, that was Nappy. And then once you've got a crowd, then you have to do some sort of trick that doesn't really work at all, which is the levitating rope. And of course, that's got everybody interested because something now is actually happening. And although it's easy on you because nothing is really happening, you don't really have to work on it. You don't have to worry about manipulation or anything else. You have to worry about pulling a string. And then it develops from there.
But it's all about pulling in the audience.
It's all about pulling in the audience.
Now, how does that relate to Punch and Judy? Peter?
Oh, Punch and Judy. Let me tell you about that. So a long time ago.
Yeah. To talk about Punch and Judy and our Unima citation, which I marketed that puppy like you wouldn't believe.
Look at that. Look at that.
Unima citation in 2019. And the 2020 year was going to be brilliant. We had so many shows booked. And
so really the pandemic is your fault, because if you hadn't have won the citation in 19, then we would have had a much better 2020.
Okay, I want to go back to Puppet Fest.
Oh, okay. You always say everything you do is based on Punch and Judy.
Yeah, and lumen code manipulation if I'm lucky. So that works out great. Yeah.
Okay, back to Puppet Fest.
I wanted to talk about after the afternoon stuff. So you're right. We would go morning, coffee break, morning, lunch, workshop, coffee break. Then we'd do something else. And it usually wasn't a show, but one year, and Connie will be able to find this, we did the Temptation of St. Anthony. Were you there that year?
I don't think so.
Honey,
good.
It's a picture of just everybody with their back to the camera. If you can find that.
Well, the year before, Drew Allison had decided that we should act out the Temptation of St. Anthony that Stephen Carter had published in the Unima journal. And we just,
and we have in that picture, we've got Lumen, we've got Pix, we've got Nick Perrone, we've got Paul Mesner, and then Peter's over there. Who's that next to you, Peter, that's just barely in the shot?
That's Nappy.
That's Nappy. Oh, he was the good angel that came down from heaven. Anyway, so we blew Drew off, and then afterwards we kind of felt really hurt. So I built these little Sicilian marionettes in this little teeny tiny stage. And the next year in the afternoon, we all performed. Lumen was St. Anthony. Pix was the pig who didn't have one single line in the show. But every time St. Anthony said something like, "Oh, dear God, protect me from these devils," the pig would go.
Talent involved,
and it was atrocious.
It was horrible.
That's brilliant though. Like Pix didn't have to learn any lines, so I'm sure he was just pleased as punch and got to be funny. I mean, that's the perfect role.
Yeah, it was just an amazing array of talent.
Oh, and Lynn Jennings was the queen of hell. She had gone to Pam Corcoran's needle felting class and got some extra wool, so that she could make this really nice pubic hair display. So when she lifted her arms like this.
But when we did it one afternoon, Todd and I were the musicians in the back, the musical accompaniment.
Yeah.
So there was more people backstage performing than there were in the audience, because we did it for whatever participants of the festival were stupid enough to come. And it was amazing because the audience all just kind of sat there with their mouths open because it made no sense whatsoever.
And Drew Allison directed it.
Perfect.
It's his fault, actually, for feeling.
Nice. No, that explains the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
It was, so yes, it was. That's why Puppet Fest Midwest for us was so marvelous, because we got to hang out with all of our friends, and we just happened to have
friends.
Some really talented friends.
Yeah, you pointed out that any festival would have been happy to have one of those guys show up as the main feature, and we had them all
every year.
Yeah.
I remember.
And we did not take them for granted. I can't tell you how many years we would finish doing Puppet Fest Midwest. We'd take maybe a week to get caught up on our sleep, and we'd start planning the next one. And it was just, our income plummeted, which is another reason we had to stop, because we had to start doing shows again more. But every year at opening night, I would sit in the back row of the theater with tears streaming down, because I was just so honored that all of you guys showed up again. And as soon as you guys all showed up, we could relax, and we could, well, no, except for that photo of us planning the next day. But it was just such an honor. And it was just amazing that you guys were all stupid enough to show up every year and create this wonderful experience.
And you all doubled up. Not only did you teach, you also usually performed. And then you also had something else that you had to do.
Like bartenders.
That was my favorite part of Puppet Fest Midwest. I love teaching the workshop. I love taking the workshops. I love doing shows. But when I got to bartend with Drew, or whoever the guest bartender was for that evening, I got to say a brief hello to everyone in the room when they would come up and get a drink. And then that was enough. It was perfect. And I had a job, and it focused me. And I guess we were silly enough to come and be a part of Puppet Fest Midwest, but it was a space that you guys provided that and a format that you guys created that made it so comfortable for everyone to be relaxed enough to enjoy each other's company and also to enjoy each other's talent. So thank you for that. I can't wait for someone to pick that mantle up and redo that kind of that kind of format again. I know you guys have been asked a million times to do it again, and I will never ask you guys to do that again, but I will thank you for doing it while you did it, because it was brilliant.
I couldn't have done it without anybody else. It wasn't our festival. It was
for
our
11 months of the year, it was ours.
There's the truth. Well, we are running out of time. I'm so sorry to have to interrupt, but I just wanted to
talk about my life.
Oh.
All right. Well, we'll just take another hour, and we'll have a.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you, Peter and Debbie, so much for spending a little. I seriously, I could talk to you guys all night long. I appreciate you coming on and talking. It's nice to get to know you just a little bit better, and it's been a pleasure to know you up to this point as well. So thank you so much. I love you both. Everyone, thank you for joining us at Meet Our Mentors. Our next guest, I believe, is Christine Papalaxis, and we will put that information in the chat below after a little while. But thank you so much for joining us. And yes,
thank you, Art. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Liz.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye.